everyone, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bia, and Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist topics and teachings, and put it in a way that relates to our own lives and makes a little bit more sense to us as teenagers. Last week, we left off talking about the incarnation of different worlds, and we left off kind of in the middle of a part, so we're going to catch up over there. So if you haven't listened to last week's, if you missed it for some reason, I really suggest going back, because especially when we split apart in half like this, that like we did, it's kind of confusing to just catch on. So sometimes if you listen to the one before, you get more background information to help you understand what's coming up next. So last week we left off, the last question we read was 176. So let's get right to question 177. In order to arrive at the perfection and supreme bliss that are humankind's final aim, must a spirit have lived on all the worlds in the entire universe? And the spirits answered, no, because there are many worlds of like degrees, where spirits would learn nothing new. So here the question is simply asking that to get to a state of perfection, to become perfect, do you have to go through every single world? It's like, if for us we could think about it like planets, because to us planets make sense because we see planets and we know what planets are, but we have to understand that when they talk about worlds, it's not always just the planets we see. There are some that we still haven't discovered, that we still don't know about, that might be invisible to us right now. So the Spirit said that we don't have to live on every single world, because some worlds are kind of the same. Like, if we think about it now, when we're discovering, in science, we're discovering other planets that look a lot like Earth. And that's because they probably are a lot like Earth, because what are the chances that we're the only ones that are at this stage of learning? There's probably millions and billions other spirits that are at the same stage, so they have to learn the same stuff, but we can't all fit on one planet. So there's several different planets that are on the same level. So if they're on the same level, then there's no point for you to keep going from each one if you don't have to. And then there's a sub-question to this, and it says, then how can we explain the plurality of a spirit's lives on the same globe? The spirits answered, it may find itself there each time in very different situations, which provide it for many opportunities to acquire experiences. So it's saying that if we don't have to live on every single world, then how do you explain why some spirits, they stay on the same globe for a couple reincarnations, that they stay like on Earth, they stay on Earth for a while? So we can explain it because each time that they reincarnate, they might be in very different positions. Maybe if we're looking at someone on Earth, a spirit on Earth, it could be someone very rich, then it could be someone very poor, it could be someone in the middle, it could be someone in Africa, someone in the US, somewhere in Russia. So these different conditions that we can live in the same world, they provide us different things of learning, because one of them, we might learn how to be rich, and we might have a trial of having a lot of money, and then the next we might have the trial of not having a lot of money. So even on the same world, there are many different levels that we can go through and try and overcome trials. Question 178. Can spirits be reborn corporally on a world that is relatively less evolved than the one on which they have already lived? The spirits answered, yes, when they have a mission to fulfill that will aid their progress. They joyfully accept the tribulation of this kind of existence in such a case, because they furnish themselves a means for further advancement. So we can be reborn, we can reincarnate into a world that's less evolved than the one we're at right now, but we won't be at the same state as we were when we were at that level. Instead of being in that world to learn our trials, we'll be on there to help that world progress, and maybe help that world move along a little bit. So we'll have a mission instead of just overcoming our own trials, And with those missions, we'll also further advance. And then there's another part to the question, and it says, might not this also occur as an expiation, and might not God send rebellious spirits to less evolved worlds? The spirits answered, spirits may remain at a standstill, but they will never regress. Thus their punishment consists of not advancing and in having to recompensate badly used lives in an environment more suited to their nature. So we're never gonna go back because we went back, like when we were talking about like going up the stairs. If we're going up the stairs, we're never gonna fall back down the stairs and go back down to a less evolved world just because we had to learn all that all over again. We might be stubborn and we might just stay where we're at and decide not to move at all, but we're never going to go backwards. So maybe if we're going to a less evolved world, maybe it's because we have something left that we can still learn, or we're there for a mission. We're trying to help the planet move along, help those spirits there, and by doing that, we're also evolving. And then there's another part to the question, and it says, who are the ones who must recommence the same existence? And the spirits answered, those who have failed in their missions or trials. So they're saying that who are the people that have to restart the same life? Like if you came on the earth as a rich person and then you had to just start all over again and just do it all over again. Maybe it's because they're saying that these are people who failed in their mission or trials. They came on Earth or they came on any of the other worlds to learn something, and in one reincarnation they still didn't learn it. So they're going to have to come back again in the same situation until they can learn from it. Question 179. Are the beings who inhabit each world all at the same degree of purification? The spirits answered, no, it is like on earth. There are some who are more advanced and some who are less advanced. So this question is basically saying that if you're on one world, it doesn't mean that you're all exactly the same. Just because we might be all, like we were talking about before with the levels in the spirit hierarchy, just because we all might be around the same general area, there's a lot of different subcategories that we might be in. Some of us, as we know, we can see some of the spirits who have been on this earth or who are on it right now. Some of them are so much more evolved than others. So even within the world, there's varying degrees of advancement. Question 180. In passing from this world to another, does a spirit retain the intelligence it possesses here? The spirits answered, yes, because intelligence is never lost. Such a spirit may have the same means of expressing it, however. It depends both on its degree of purity and the state of the body it acquires. So what they're saying here is that from passing from one world to another, when we keep reincarnating, we're not going to lose our knowledge. What we know it's given for us. That's why sometimes we see those cases of little kids who play the piano. They've never played the piano before, and then all of a sudden they play it perfectly. That's because they're remembering stuff, because they have that within them. And maybe you just need to practice it. If you learn something once, maybe in a few years, you're going to need a reminder of how to do it. But once you have that reminder, it sinks in again and you can do it again. So it's just like that. We're never going to forget it. Maybe we need to remember that we have that skill in the first place. But once we remember and practice again, it's within us. It'll be really easy for us because we're never going to lose what we already learned. Question 181. Do the beings who inhabit different worlds have bodies similar to ours? The spirits answered, of course they have bodies, because the spirit must be clothed with matter in order to act upon matter. This envelope, however, is more material or less so, according to the degree of purity of the spirit has reached. This is what determines the difference among the worlds through which we must pass For there are many dwellings in God's house, therefore many degrees. Some recognize this and are conscious of it here on earth, but others know nothing at all. So what they're saying here is that depending on how evolved spirits are, again, when we were talking about the evolution, the spirit hierarchy, and those who are at the bottom, the least evolved spirits, they were still very attached to material things. So to be very attached to material things, you have a very material type of body, or clothes like they're saying. So you have a very material one because you're still very attached to material things. But the higher you go up and the more evolved you are, the less attached you are to material things, so also the less material your body has to be. Question 182. Can we accurately know the physical and moral state of the different worlds? The spirits answered, we, the spirits, can only reply to you according to your degree of evolution. This means that we must not reveal these things to everybody, because not all are in the same position to comprehend them. Hence, such revelations would be troubling to them. So here, when they're asking, can we know the physical and moral states of other worlds? And they're saying that the spirits know that, and the people who have evolved their way up, they know that, but they can't tell everyone, because depending on what degree of evolution you're at, on how evolved you are, then for some people this could be very troubling information. And then Allan Kardec goes on for a few paragraphs and explains this a little bit more. He says, as spirits purify themselves, the body that clothes them also approaches the spirit nature. Their matter becomes less dense, and they no longer painfully drag themselves around on the ground. The needs of the physical body are less coarse, and they no longer have to destroy other living beings in order to feed themselves. They are freer and have a perception unknown to us, which enables them to see things far away. In other words, they can see things through the eyes of their body that we can see only through thought. So here what they're saying is kind of sums up what we were saying in the beginning, how the bodies, it depends on how evolved you are. If you're more evolved, then you're less attached to material things, so your body can be less dense. It doesn't have to be so material. So then with that comes that, like they said here, that you're not eating meat, other living beings, and we're freer, and they said that they can see things. Their perception opens up. So it's not only just because they're evolved, their body's less dense, but also their thinking, like what's holding them back from seeing and thinking so much outside of the box. And then Allan Kardec continues, and he says, the purification of spirits is reflected in the moral perfection of the beings in which they are incarnated. The animal passions become weaker. The selfishness gives away to fraternal sentiment. It is thus that on worlds more evolved than ours, wars are unknown, and there are no motives for hatred and discord, because no one would dream of harming a fellow being. Their intuition concerning the future, which is surely the conscious void of remorse given to them, makes death no longer a cause of apprehension. Instead, they look upon it without fear and as a simple transformation. The lifespan on different worlds appears to be proportionate to the spirit's degree of moral and physical advancement, and this is perfectly logical. The less material the body is, the less it is subject to the torments that disorganize it. The purer the spirit is, the less it is subject to the passions that undermines it. This is a further design of Providence, who desires for suffering to be shortened as much as possible. So here he kind of, again, just summed up what we were saying, how that the more evolved you are, the freer you're going to be. You're not going to be so held down in this dense material that you can't really see clear. Your mind's going to be clear. You're going to be able to see more outside of the box. Right now, at our level, we all see so inside the box, but the more evolved you get, you can see outside of that box, and again, it's just all less material. Question 186. In passing from one world to another, must the spirit experience a new childhood? The spirits answered, childhood is a necessary transition on all worlds, but it is not always as obtuse as it is on yours. So, what they're saying here is that, do we always have to go through a new childhood? Like, kind of, do we all have to start at the beginning, then kind of work our way up? We have to grow. We have to go to school first. We don't just show up as adults. And they said, so childhood is necessary. It's necessary for us to be children and to gradually work our way up. But it's not always as obtuse, and obtuse means large. So maybe for us, it takes us years and years and years, and some people, it takes them a long, long time to get out and do their own thing, move out of their house. So for us, it might be a really long time, but for other planets, maybe they only need 5 years, and then after 5 years, the children are ready to, they're at that degree that they can move out and they can become their own person. So it depends. Childhood, the length of the childhood can be very long or it can be very short, but it is a necessary transition that we go through. Question 184. Can spirits choose the new world they will inhabit? The spirits answered, not always, but they may ask for and receive what they desire if they deserve it, because spirits only have access to worlds according to their degree of purification. So, sometimes spirits can ask, up in the spirits world, they can ask which world they want to go to, but not always, because sometimes they might want to go to a world that's too evolved for them, or that they don't really have a clear mission in going to that world. So there has to be a good purpose for them to kind of approve to you going to that world. And then there's a sub-question, and it says, if a spirit doesn't make a request, what determines the world on which it will reincarnate? And the spirit said, its degree of purification. So quite simply, if you don't make a request, if you're not like, oh, I want to go to this world or a world like this, then depending on how far evolved you are, your degree of purification, you'll end up in a place that's kind of similar to your degree of purification and that has something meaningful for you to learn. Question 185. Is the physical and moral state of living beings on each globe perpetually the same? The spirits answered, no. All worlds are subject to the law of progress. All began like yours, an inferior state. However, the earth will undergo a transformation. It will become a terrestrial paradise when all humankind chooses good over evil. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, thus, the race that populates the earth today will disappear someday and will be replaced gradually by more highly evolved beings. Such races will succeed the current one, such as the current one will succeed the other that were even less evolved. So what they're saying is that will it be the same kind of on each globe, the moral state? And they're saying that no, eventually Earth is going to progress and all the other worlds, they're going to progress. So right now, like before, if we think about it, they were cavemen on Earth. And then gradually the Earth transformed, and then there was more evolved people, and we weren't cavemen, we were a little bit more evolved than that. So it'll keep going until, like they said over here, that it's a terrestrial paradise where we choose good over evil. So that may seem really far right now, but eventually Earth will get to that point. It's not stuck being at this level. Question 186. Are there worlds on which the spirit no longer lives in a material body and only has the perispirit as its envelope? The spirit said, "Yes, and that envelope itself becomes so etherealized that to you it is as if we did not exist at all. This is the state of the pure spirits." So they're saying here that the pure spirits, they don't have the need for any material body at all. Like we were saying that the material can get less dense, they literally have none. So they only have the paraspirit, and that for us it might seem as it just doesn't even exist at all. And that's only for like the pure spirits. And then they said, so based on this premises, it would seem that there is no precise line separating the state of the final incarnation and that of a pure spirit. The spirit said, there is no such line. The difference diminished little by little, finally becoming imperceptible, like the night fading away at the first light of day. So what they're saying is here, so they're saying, so if eventually you can have literally no material body, so is there a precise like separating, like, okay, now you have this body, now you have this body? And they're saying that there isn't a really precise line. It kind of gradually happens. Like they're saying, like the sun rising, the first light, it gradually happens. It's not just completely pitch black dark and then it just gets completely sunny. It's a gradual process. So that's the same way with your body. You don't just go to having a very material body to having none. Question 187. Is the paraspirit substance the same on all globes? The spirit said, no, it is more etherealized on some than others. When it goes from one world to another, a spirit clothes itself with the matter proper for each world at a speed faster than lightning. So the paraspirit substance, what they're saying is that, is it the same? And they said no. For some, it's like invisible. Like we're talking about the pure spirits. For some, it may seem that it doesn't even exist at all. But for some of us, the less evolved spirits, then we can really see like a clear presence of it. So for each different world, the spirit is able to kind of clothe itself in the right materials to be on this earth. Like if we think about Jesus, he was a pure spirit. He didn't even need a material body, but he was able to clothe himself, to put on the material body that we have, and to be able to be here and to help us progress. Question 188. Do pure spirits inhabit special worlds, or do they inhabit universal space without being attached to any particular globe? The spirits answered, pure spirits inhabit certain worlds, but they are not confined to themselves as people are to the earth. They are much better than all others at being ubiquitous. So what they're saying is here that the pure spirits, they do have certain worlds, but they aren't so really attached to it. Like, if you think about it, Jesus, he governs our earth, our planet. So sometimes, most of the time, he has to be around. He has to be focusing on us. He can't be all the way across the galaxy. So they can move around, like staying at someone's house. They can stay at someone's house, they can move to another house, and they're not so attached to being, okay, this is my house, I have to be here. They kind of just, they can float around, and since they are at the state of all good and pure, they're not like fighting over, oh, don't steal my bed, don't do this. It's a lot more pure, and that's kind of something that's hard to understand for us who are very material. And then there's a footnote that goes on for some while, so we can just read bits of it because it's kind of extra information. So the first paragraph starts, according to some spirits, of all the globes that comprise our solar system, the Earth is one of those whose inhabitants are the least physically and morally advanced. Mars as a planet per se is even less advanced, whereas Jupiter is far superior in every respect. The sun is not inhabited by corporeal beings, but is a meeting place for higher order spirits, who radiate their thoughts from there to other worlds, which they govern the aid of low order spirits by communicating with them through the universal fluid. Regarding its physical constitution, the sun could be a focus of electricity. it appears that all suns operate in the same way. So what they're saying here, which is pretty interesting, that Earth to a lot of people think that Earth is just really physically and morally, it's the least of all advanced. But Mars, the planet Mars, is even less advanced than spirits think Earth is. Mars is even less. But Jupiter is so extremely beyond the point that we are at. And they're saying that the sun isn't inhabited, but that's a meeting place. So like Jesus, like he governs our planet with other spirits, and they talk because they have to communicate with each other. So that would be a meeting place for them. And then it continues. Size and distance from the sun has no necessary bearing on the degree of the other planets' developments, because it appears that Venus is more evolved than Earth, and Saturn less so than Jupiter. So that's pretty interesting. And when we just learn straight science from in school, it kind of contradicts with this, because that science, they haven't been able to prove this. Like, we're struggling just to get on Mars, let alone getting on Jupiter and Venus and all these other planets. But they're saying that just how far you are from the sun doesn't actually affect the degree of evolution on that planet. And then it continues. Many spirits who have animated well-known personalities on Earth are said to have reincarnated on Jupiter, one of the worlds nearest to perfection. It is surprising that on a globe so advanced, persons may be found who might not have been considered so very evolved when they lived on Earth. However, this is not so astonishing if we consider the possibility that certain spirits who inhabited the planet could have been sent to the Earth to fulfill missions that did not place them in very prominent positions, at least by earthly standards. Second, between their earthly existences and their life on Jupiter, they may have intermediate ones in which they evolved further. Third, on the world as this, there are many different degrees of development, and between those degrees there may be as much difference as the separating the primitives from the civilized individuals on Earth. Thus the fact that they inhabited Jupiter does not mean that they are at the level of the most evolved beings. In the same way that persons are not on the same level as scholars at the institution simply because they happen to live in Paris. So here, this was really interesting. They were saying that many spirits, maybe well-known spirits that came here on Earth, they reincarnated on Jupiter, and that's one of the worlds that's closest to perfection, to being a perfect world. And sometimes these people might have not even been that well known. They might have just lived kind of ordinary lives, kind of undercover. But also this could be because they did so much, but they weren't like showing off. It could also be because maybe after Earth, they went through several different incarnations on different planets and then went to Jupiter. And also just because they're on Jupiter doesn't mean that they're automatically the most evolved, but they are definitely very evolved. So that's where we'll leave off today, and next week we'll start off on the next part, which is progressive transmigration, and we'll go over the definition of that world and everything else in that chapter. But before we leave off today, I'd like to read our daily quote from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone. So, March 7th, stepping out of our ruts. The truth is that our finest moments are most likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments, propelled by our discomfort, that we are likely to step out of our ruts and start searching for different ways and truer answers. M. Scott Peck. As much as we may dislike being unhappy, discomfort can be a powerful motivation to change our lives. Similarly, too much comfort can lull us into a complacency and stagnation. There is nothing wrong with being comfortable, as long as we don't let it close our eyes and minds. There is nothing wrong with being uncomfortable, as long as we use our discomfort to make our lives better. If this is a good period of my life, I will enjoy it fully. If this is a difficult time, I'll do what I need to do to get through it and to come out stronger. I'm Bia. Thank you all for listening.
This has been Cardeck Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.